Good afternoon, class. This is our second to the last lecture in LAMP211. We are now in the top module 2, that is uh, land administration and management in the Philippines, the institutional and organizational framework of land. No? Now, the lesson for today is lesson 2.2, that is institutional and organizational framework of land administration. Lesson 2.1 is actually also dealing with institutional and organizational framework, but that time, we were discussing about land management system. So this time we will be looking at framework for land administration system, so that at the end of the day, we will have a kind of clearer, say, understanding and perspective in terms of what land administration is all about, what land management is all about, and things like that. No, we would be guided by these two concepts and being able to understand what do we mean, or what what exactly is the meaning of LAMP, or Land Administration and Management Program. Okay. Now, before I proceed, let me remind you that uh, your assessment or your group output, no, your group output is I'm going to expect that before the finals, so please prepare them, and I would like to really receive them before the finals, so that your grades will not be delayed, no? So as I said, the final exam will be take home. Okay, take home, that means although you answer it on your own, but please try to be independent, so that you would get the best, or the most out of the lecture, by being able to really work independently and learn independently also. Okay, so without so much ado, we will go now to lesson 2.2, the institutional and organizational framework of land administration system. Okay, this lecture is uh, essentially based on the paper presentation of Danilo R. Antonio from the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, which he lectured during the Land Sector Summit in Manila. But this time, we are also supplementing it with our own references, so that we will be able to enrich his lecture with, say, for example, some theoretical and at the same time conceptual depth. So, instituting good governance in the land administration system in the Philippines. Okay. Now, when we talk about governance, but by the way, why do we have to relate or connect land administration system with governance? The reason for that is that at the parcel level, you will be dealing directly with the private owners, and the taxpayers, so that the 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 implementation of programs there is more of like how you uh, be able to maybe penetrate or understand the human and social dynamics of people, so that at the end of the day, you can get buy-in, you can get commitment in terms of how to implement land administration systems at the parcel level. Okay, that is why it's going to be the deeper you go, the more sticky the dynamics among players, so that the hardest part is at the private level. That means that at the parcel level, because weak governance is a factor that contributes to countries' slow growth and undermines dream of becoming one of the economic tigers in Asia. Okay, according to the ombudsman, the government has lost about 48 billion US dollars according to Commission on Audit, and 40 million US dollars are lost governmental corruption every year. So that is very what very alarming. No. Now, another thing we have here, a in early 2001, allegations of corruption and governance were the primary cause of another people power. Okay, you see, we did people power twice, and the second people power was actually triggered by corruption. But despite the change in government, the country's low-level corruption perception index still persists. No, so that's very corruption erodes the gains in good governance. Now, good administration system aids in social, economic, and ecological development of society. No quarrel about it. No, it is a precondition for economic progress, social stability, and sustainable development. Okay. Now, the challenge is make it efficient and effective so as to unleash its full potential, so as to unleash its potential contribution to the country's economic development or the country's development. So these are some of the contentions in uh, putting up a good governance needed for land administration and management system. Okay, the importance of a well-functioning land administration system. If you lay down a functional land administration system, this is the important, or these are the importance of that. You see, a total land area in the Philippines is about 30 million hectares, and only 50% of which are considered forest. That means public lands. No? 47% are classified as alienable, okay, and disposable. Only 47%. That means we have a huge tracts of land that are still public. When it is public, it is encroached and squatted by many players for that matter. The Philippines has a 3%, about 3% are unclassified lands, no? Estimated that were about 24 million parcels with inalienable and disposable lands. 13.1 million parcels already titled and 11.1 million parcels untitled. No? So land administration facilitates asset reform also. It not only facilitates market or investment, it also facilitates asset reform. What do we mean? By securing tenureship or ownership of a particular land, it will now transform into a very useful and valuable asset. It's going to be transformation of asset from undocumented to documented property. Boy, the price is going to adjust very quickly. Okay. Land administration also facilitates the potential to speed up the whole areas of adoption of accomplished and low-cost land surveys, land boundaries, implementation of implementation alternative dispute resolution mechanism, and adoption of appropriate fee structures and land valuation. Uh, Now, another thing, land administration, when it facilitates asset reform, land administration also protects the rights of the poor through an effective land registration system. So, kailangan, pag may registration ng land, palista ka agad. Because that would now be the basis of really ascertaining or going through the normal routine of securing your tenure status in that land. No? So that's very important. Now, according to Hernando de Soto, a well-known Peruvian economist, he valued the dead capital in the Philippines, like land, for example. He valued it at $113 million in 2001, in 2000, which is approximately 5.5 trillion pesos. No? Land markets, land markets undertaken in 2004 has confirmed the findings of Soto. Says that in the land market survey, we have what? 2000, in 2000 was about 4.9 trillion. You see, it's close to that particular value. And then you have also current price and expected to increase to 11.5 trillion pesos. You see, in 2010, it was valued at somewhere between 4 to 4.9 trillion pesos. But it is projected, or in 2010, projected, or it was projected that when in 2010 it will reach 2000, 11.5 trillion US dollars, or pesos, no, Philippine pesos. So that means today is 2020, the number could be a lot bigger than what it was in 2004 or 10, no? So there is 60% of this land are informal and no land markets. Okay. Now the Philippine land market is mirrored by gross value added. Okay, in real estate and ownership of the land dwellings is the key component of the Philippine economy. Okay, so that when you talk about the Philippine economy, land market is also the key growth engine for every percent increase in GBA, or gross value added, in land markets. There is a corresponding 1.2% increase in country's GDP. Okay? Grabe kayo. Can be summed up into two. Ang overview of the land evolution in the Philippines can be summed up into two. One is multiple. The whole system is governed by multiple laws. Okay? Maon in nature sa atong land administration system in the Philippines. It's multiple, okay? And it's governed by multiplicity of rules, okay? And then it's complex, okay? Complex. The result of the multiple laws which lead to complexity, overlapping, and inconsistent. Sa issuance of title nga lang, issuance of title, how many agencies are going to are allowed to issue title? You have DNR, you have the by judiciary, you also have DAR, and several, maybe others. So in other words, they are several organizations are looking at the same parcels and can be titled depending as ay gusto nimo, no? So it's multiplicity of function. So that is the land administration system in the Philippines. Now, the frameworks for the land administration system in the Philippines, that from the legal and regulatory framework, you have institutional framework and technical and administrative framework and land markets. Okay? So, legal and regulatory. So, you have to have permit, i-privatize ang land. Institutional framework. Okay? Wow, who's going to be, who will do the titling for you? Technical and administrative framework. That means to say, who's going to do that? How to implement the technical survey, and then the land market. So that means to say, if you have all those elements, land market is going to be favorable to you. Okay? So this is a graph dimension of the weak governance as it affects the land administration system. You have weak governance, you have dysfunctional system, delays in completion, and so on and so forth, and so. No? Now, the land administration system in the Philippines, first is when it comes to institutional framework, titling is very important. In rural areas, access to government land by poor, particularly through the provision of Public Land Act, was limited due to the unreasonable requirements of payment. Okay. Unreasonable collection of payment. No? So, in rural areas, in urban areas, realization of land ownership under the administrative procedure is slow, okay, expensive, and inefficient. Okay, going to the courts for titling purposes requires a great deal of capital investment and patience. No wonder, I'm telling you this. Politicians in Metro Manila, although there are still patches of public lands in Metro Manila, but no politician has strived to give them the full security of ownership. They just are contented with the rights to build. Now, sometimes for unscrupulous politicians, they take advantage of this by using this as a machinery to gain electoral power. No? Because if they don't have individual title, they will be dependent on the decision of the Whoever is the otherwise, they will be evicted anytime soon. So you have also titling in the rural areas, you have redistribution of private agricultural lands, and then farmers to the agrarian reform, so on. No? So these in rural areas, you have there a situation where titling is really being government, and then of course people are also providing what kana bang official representation to process it other than one particular say record repository like the local registrar. No, now in urban areas, however, the during the GMA government and it replaced by Pinoy. Now, government lands in the urban areas are socialized housing sites. They can be concluded, no? Thus, it can be concluded that the present and land administration system affects all poor programs, including those initiated by highest office of the land. No? So that means in urban areas, gigamit po siya ang socialized housing project, gamit po sila to addressing the needs of the poor. Okay. Moreover, in urban areas, the lack of vision and focus and deadlines in finishing these types of land reforms contributed further to the deterioration of people's trust in the government. No? Murag dili-dali ang ilang mga processing sa title. So that will also erode confidence of people to the government. Example, Mr. Bonifacio, who has spent 18 years in his life trying to secure a title over a small piece of land, proclaimed government land is occupied or occupying until now he has not received the title. Okay? So, madya ang diferensya. Very slow and there's multiplicity of function. Now, especially this one, registration process. Any mistakes, even obvious typographical errors, require a decision of the court to be corrected and at the expense of the title holders. No? Kung na-correction na imong title, imong ginang ngadto sa korte and at your expense. Kinahanglan accurate ang entry diha sa title. Now, another is land valuation and taxation process. No? Now, ang land administration is really working at the parcel level. Hence, it is able to provide a basis for collecting tax. In the Philippines, we collect agricultural tax. Whether you plant your field or not, they collect tax anyway. So that you are collected with tax, you will also be collected with income tax. But in other countries, they don't collect agricultural tax or land tax. They only collect income tax. Okay? But since they only collect income tax, they are very strict in terms of monitoring who is the owner of this land, why is this abandoned, and so on and so forth. And before anything goes, you might find your land being taken over by the government because you are an absentee owner. That cannot be tolerated. But in the Philippines, we are not so strict in implementing that policy. Okay, if you look at the high transaction cost taxes, so you have this on the dynamics of land administration system. Who affects what? Something like that, no? So the problem, the symptoms, the direct effects, and so on, no? Ano yung kwento? Kind of a flow of, like a flow of this document after maternity status. Now, who are the main players in the land administration system? The major players are actually the private sector or society groups or even presidential directives. Other institutions considered as player also is playing the role of that. No? Now, in instituting good governance, there are 6 principles that needs to be observed. And I think this is self-explanatory. No? Number 1 principle in instituting good governance for land administration is that leadership and participation. So by, do not ever step ahead of the decision unless na participation ang concern. Okay? Not only participation, but there is also simplicity in the transaction. Dili complex, dili kasabot ang uban. No? And then also, transparency, clear, lantaran, walay itago. No? And then there is fairness, efficiency, and effectiveness, and down the line, it is sustainable. Sustainability is very important. Even if the heads of the local government is gone because he did not win in the election anymore. But if you have this good and working land administration system, you will still be able to replace or make do of whatever is available. No? So you have efficiency and effectiveness and sustainability. Now, application or concrete action for this situation in our land administration system in the Philippines. Okay? To proceed with this, there is what we call as setting up of a vision and then advocate for reforms and re-engineer the whole system. So, hopefully, with the approval, sana ma-approve yung 18th Congress naman siguro karon. Sana ma-approve yung NALUMA or National Land Administration and Management Act, no? NALUMA. National Land Use and Management Act, NALUMA, no? So, recommendations by DNR to address the structural defects of the system. One is strengthen leadership and management, remove duplication and overlap, simplify na yun, consolidate and coordinate production and access, and then abolish judicial process. Wala na ang court baka issue po title, dili na, pwede na, no? Kinahanglan, one agency and has it all, something like that. And then you also reform, consolidate and land administration, progressive extension of touring and then streamline the land administration tax and remove disincentives to their informal registration. So and so on, progress towards cost recovery for service. Similar local government, political intervention in the assessment of property tax, or develop and implement a uniform and enforceable uniformity of best practice valuation standards within the government. Okay, you have solutions that can address this complexity. You have institutional overlaps, no? Or these are factors actually. Institutional overlaps, including functions related to the approval of surveys. And there's also what we call as free exchange in the information must also be institutionalized, making available cadastral maps to agencies working on land valuation. Okay. Improving on coordination mechanism, introducing formal incentives and sanctions mechanism of enforcing them seriously may be a good way to encourage productivity, no? Kinahanglan og dili pwedeng lagayan, no? So, decentralization of decision-making processes. So that means to say, di na ka mo adtog different office kung title kibalik ka. There is going to be a centralized one-stop shop agency that is in charge of that, no? So, to remind us to do that and to be able to effectively implement that, we have to monitor its progress. Once ang NALUMA will be put in place, careful monitoring of the progress. Notification of milestone para di na yun di na ma-erode ang success, and then reform process should never cease. Padayon yapon kutob sa makita nga reform gyud. And then make it sustainable also. Capacity building of programs needed to implement the initiatives and activities of the private sector for long. No? So, the system must be able to be flexible and responsive responsive to changing demands. No, so that means all these things will remind us in terms of how to put in place a workable land administration system. Monitor, make it sustainable. So unsay monitor, mao na siya, no? The initiatives and mga processes involved. So with that note, no? With that note, I would say thank you guys and thank you class for your attention. And I hope that you will be able to get a good grasp in terms of the differences on on the institutional and organizational framework of land management and also land administration in the Philippines. No, so thank you for listening. We will see you during the next lecture that I will be delivering.